Hello, in today's video we will see how to install and use Git on Windows. As you probably know, Git is an open source application that is used to manage and control the source code of applications. And this is very useful when we have many developers working on the same project. And this tutorial is going to help you to get started with this utility. What you need for this tutorial is a Windows machine that you have administrator privileges on, and you need to have a text editor installed on this machine, and you need to have a GitHub account. So let's start with the text editor. I'm going to download Notepad++. Of course, you can install any text editor you like, and there are lots and lots of text editors out there. Next, I'm going to download Git for Windows. So in your search engine, type Git for Windows. Git for Windows. I'm going to download this latest version 2.39 at the time of this recording, 64-bit version. After downloading the Git installer, just launch it. Allow the app to make changes to your machine. Review the GNU general license, public license, and click next. Change if you want the installation location of Git. I'm just going to leave it to default and click next. This screen allows you to select the components you would like to install. Just leave the defaults unless you have some specific needs, and then click next. The installer will offer to create a start menu folder. Just leave it as default and click next. Here you will be asked to choose the default text editor for Git. I'm going to choose Notepad++ since I have already installed it, and then click next. This screen allows you to choose a different name for your initial branch. The default branch name is master, unless you are working in a team that needs a different name. For me, I'm just going to leave it to default and then click next. This screen of the installer allows you to change the path environment. As you probably know, the path is the default set of directories included when you run a command prompt. I'm going to leave this one to default, which is the middle option, and it is recommended, as you can see, and click next. On this screen, the installer is going to ask you which SSH client you would like to use with Git. By default, Git has its own SSH client. So if you don't have a specific client that you want to use, just leave the default option and click next. On this screen, it is related to server certificates. I'm going to leave this to the default, but if you are working in an Active Directory environment, you should probably consider the second option. So for me, it's going to be default. Just and click next. This next screen is related to the way data is formatted. Changing this option may cause problems, so it is recommended that you leave it to the default option, which is the first one. Click next. On this screen, we are asked to choose the default terminal emulator. I'm going to leave it to default and click next. Now the installer is asking us what the git pull command should do. By default, git pull is going to do fast forward or merge, unless you want something else. I'm just going to leave it to default and click next. On this screen, the installer asks which credential helper you would like to use. Let's use the default one that comes with Git and click next. For the remaining options, just leave the default selection and click next. So this was for the some extra options, and here I'm not going to configure any experimental options. And now click install to start the installation of Git. When the installation finishes, you can choose to view the release notes if you want and click finish. Now, how to launch Git in Windows and use it. Git can be used in two modes: a bash scripting shell mode and a graphical user interface mode. So let's see the bash shell mode. To launch Git bash on the Windows Start, just find Git bash and open it, which is this one. As you can see, you also have Git cmd and Git GUI. For now, let's open Git bash. In the same way, you can launch the Git GUI. Next step, we will see how to connect to a remote repository. And for this, you need a GitHub username and password. I have already set up a GitHub account, and if you don't have one, you need to set up an account to be able to connect to a remote repository. Let's first create a test directory with PowerShell. Now let's create the directory by typing the command make dir. For example, first git. Okay, and now the folder has been created. Let's cd into this new folder, first git. Now let's configure your GitHub credentials. You either configure your GitHub credentials with the username or with the email. I'm going to do it with the username. So type git config -- global user dot name space, and then in between double quotes type your username, which is for me is, now type enter to configure the username. I have no errors, so I assume it has worked. Now let's see how to clone a GitHub repository into this first Git directory. So for now, if I do dir, I have nothing in this folder, it's empty. So let's see if after cloning I will have something in here. I'm here on the GitHub website, so I'm going to type barcode. Let's find, for example, a barcode application. For example, let's see this one, which is built with Laravel PHP. So it's a web application. Go here to code and then copy this URL, then go back to PowerShell and type git clone, and then the URL that you have copied and hit enter. So what should this be doing is clone this remote repository that is on the GitHub website, clone it to this directory that is called first git. It's telling me here that it is 100% complete. So let's do dir and see if we have something here. And as you can see, we have a directory called barcode. If I go inside of it and I do dir again, as you can see, I have exactly what we have here. So this is the source, this is the tests folder, and these folders are here, same as readme, composer, etc. So the repository has been cloned successfully. When you are in this barcode directory, you can list the remote repositories using the command git remote -v. And as you can see, you get two lines, the origin, first line origin for fetch and second line origin for push. You can push local files to the remote repository. So if you have added some files or changed some existing files, you can push them to the remote repository. So let's see how we can do this. Let's create a new file with this command. Let's do new test.txt. Okay, the file has been created. Now let's check the status of the new git branch by doing git and it's telling me here, after doing git status, that the file test.txt is untracked. So let's add this new file to the local project by doing git add test.txt. Now it's added to the project. Now run git status again to make sure that the new file has been added. Git status, and as you can see, now it's saying changes to be committed. So it means that this file has been added to the project and it is waiting to be pushed. In order to push or to commit this file to the remote repository or to the project, just do git commit -m and give your commit operation a name. Let's call it, for example, or let's call it commit1. It looks like I need to tell Git my email address because I have only configured my username. So let's do that. Let's do git config user dot email, and then I type my email. Hit enter. Okay, I assume that I don't need to do that for my username because I already did it, but I'm going to do it anyway since I'm already here. Okay, let's try to commit again, and now it has worked. By doing commit, it's like I'm registering these changes with the local project, but these changes have not been pushed to the remote repository yet. So in order to do that, I need to do git push, and that's how I can send these changes to the remote repository. Hit enter, wait a little bit, and the GitHub website is going to ask you for your credentials. I can do sign in with my browser where I'm already signed in. Click authorize Git credential manager, and it says access succeeded, and I should be able to close this window now. The remote repository has replied that permission to this remote repository has been denied to my username, unable to access this project. And this is normal because the owner of this repository probably has not authorized anyone to push changes to their repository. But if it is a repository that you have access to, this is how you can do it. This is how you can push changes, okay? If you have followed this tutorial from the beginning step by step, you do have now a working installation of Git on your Windows system. If you are interested in doing the same thing on a Linux machine, for example Ubuntu or CentOS, please let me know in the comments below and I will do it. I hope this video has been helpful for you, and thank you for watching.